I'm going to move on to another game, highly anticipated matchup this week. Number 1 and number 2 seed in the AFC, respectively. Ravens and Dolphins. This one, it was a good game early on, and then much like a lot of the games between top teams this year, then it wasn't. Baltimore Ravens, simply destroyed the Miami Dolphins 56-19. I mean, this game probably all but clinched the MVP for Lamar Jackson, sends the Ravens directly to the number 1 seed. They keep it, they clinch it, got home field advantage for the rest of the playoffs. Whereas the Dolphins now they have to play for their AFC Championship lives, AFC East Championship lives, I should say, against the Bills next week, and could possibly drop out of the 2 spot all the way to 6 with a loss to Buffalo.
Man, as my grandma would say, after the second quarter of this game, the Ravens just put belt to behind every minute of this game. I mean, it was not good for the Dolphins. They started good, they started close, and then the Ravens have mowed through Super Bowl contenders week after week. Though I haven't seen a lot of people saying that the Dolphins have been overrated. I'm not sure the Dolphins have really been highly rated by anybody. I think most people thought the Ravens would win this. I don't think, however, that most people thought it would be 56-19. I did see, actually, which is funny enough, somebody made one of their picks yesterday. They projected Brock Purdy to score 52 points. That did not happen, but the Ravens did put up 56, and we will look at that on paper. It is a lot to go through. The Ravens had a great game. Lamar Jackson was called by an analyst, or like a sports radio host a few days ago, a great athlete, but not quarterbacky enough. And he put that to bed immediately, having probably one of the best quarterbacky games of the season. 18 for 21, so only 3 incompletions, 321 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, only racked up 35 rushing yards. His probably most quarterbacky game, maybe of his NFL career. Not that I think that he hasn't been a good quarterback before this, but he just put that to rest pretty quickly with one of the best games we've seen from a quarterback this season. And we had obviously talked last week that he had pretty much locked up the MVP, and if he hadn't last week, I think he had now. Tyler Huntley also came in towards the end of the game. They had a few rushing attempts, ended up getting backed up to be at 19 yards, and then Tyler Huntley said no problem, threw one pass, completed one pass, 19 yards, touchdown. He got in on the fun. Ravens' run game has been dominant all season. They are one of the best running offenses in the NFL, I believe the best one, and they continued that in this game, getting 160 yards total on the ground. Gus Edwards got 68 of those and a touchdown. Justice Hill got 48. Of course, as I said, Lamar had 35. Melvin Gordon even picked up 10 yards and a touchdown towards the end of the game as well. The air game, though, was just as dominant. I said this in our previous video today, that the Cowboys' run game kind of fell apart, but they had a big air game, and sometimes you don't look at both. The Ravens looked at both in this one. Zay Flowers led the way with 3 receptions, 106 yards, and a touchdown. That is boosted by the 75-yard touchdown, but I say boosted. Only had 3 receptions. I mean, he did everything asked of him. Justice Hill, who was productive on the ground with those 48 yards, also picked up 64 in the air and caught himself a touchdown. Rashad Bateman got 54 yards, and then Isaiah Likely had 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Charlie Kullar and Patrick Ricard also scored some touchdowns for the Ravens. Everybody was getting in. They called me and asked me if I wanted to come score a touchdown. I told them I was busy, but they were just passing out touchdowns to everybody they could. I'd say this, not really a negative here. Gus Edwards did end up losing a fumble in the game. It obviously does not do much against the Ravens here. And then Trenton Simpson recovered a Mike White fumble, and Roquan Smith and Geno Stone picked off Tua. Whew. And that is all of the Ravens. For the Dolphins, Tua, not his best game, not really the worst game, but it was rough. 22 for 38, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Just a little bit of a rough day at the office for him. Devon Achane was the only one on the ground who really got anything going in the absence of Raheem Mostert. He picked up 107 yards, no touchdown on the ground. He would get one in the air. Obviously, Mostert was out in this game, and the Dolphins have kind of had the same sort of 1-2 punch that the Lions have been running. But this one, Achane just picks up all of the slack. Jeff Wilson doesn't really do much to get back there. Has a good game on the ground, but it is not enough to overcome the Ravens defense, who have also been an incredible part of that team. Tyreek Hill led the Dolphins in the air with 76 yards, Durham Smythe was second with 54 yards, but it would be Achane and Cedric Wilson Jr., not Jeff Wilson Jr., that would bring in the 2 touchdowns on 30 and 27 yards, respectively. Mike White, as I said, did fumble, and Javon Holland was the one who recovered the Gus Edwards fumble. And as Terrence said, this game started pretty close. It was 14-13 at its peak of being close, unless you count like 0-0 at the beginning of the game. So it was 14-13, and then all of a sudden, before the first half ends, it goes from 14-13 to 21-13 to 28-13. So things got out of hand pretty quickly, and it would continue that in the second half. The Dolphins would just kind of fall apart. After starting 14-13, they would only score 6 more points, and the Ravens would score a whole lot more. So this one, again, Ravens keep blowing through Super Bowl contenders. We predicted that the Dolphins would be losing in this game. As I said, I don't think most people thought it'd be this big of a score. I did not think it would be this big of a score. I hoped it'd be a little closer. This was even worse than the Ravens dismantling of the 49ers, and I guess the Dolphins are a little below the Niners on the scale of the overall talent of the team, especially without Mostert on the field. So you would I guess expect it to be a bigger victory if the Ravens are going to win, but I would not have predicted a 56-19 game. But it's impressive. They've held 2 Super Bowl contenders to 19 points in back-to-back weeks, and they have scored a bunch of points on them in that same process. So big props to the Ravens here, making themselves look like Super Bowl favorites, not just Super Bowl contenders. They look like they're on their path to winning it all if everyone can stay healthy and on and firing on all cylinders. The Ravens have been very impressive this season. This game continued that.
I think back to that 2019 game, which is the first game of the season for the Ravens and Dolphins, ended up being 59-10. That was the beginning of Lamar's MVP season, and it didn't feel like it was that bad because I remember, seeing some of that game and I was like, Jesus Christ, like that was bad. But this one didn't feel too much better. Early on, Dolphins went all the way down the field. It was a textbook drive for them. I mean, it looked like this was going to be that type of game where it's like, okay, back and forth all day. It seemed like it was going to be high scoring just based off of that drive because the Dolphins, for the most part, got zero resistance from the Ravens defense. And then the same thing pretty much happened on the next drive. You had a play that was to Rashad Bateman that was real early on the first play of the drive, I should say, actually. And that would have been a touchdown. Ended up scoring on that drive anyway. But that kind of just set the tone for the game. And you would have thought from there it would have continued. And it did for a little bit. Dolphins get another good drive and get a field goal. Ravens get a touchdown and then another long drive and a field goal. But then after that, that's where things kind of took a turn here. 14-13. That's, like you said, that's the last time it was really close. The Ravens were able to get that play to Zay Flowers, 75 yards all the way down the field, touchdown, broken coverage for the Dolphins. And then in an attempt to get a playoff before the 2-minute warning, Dolphins rushed threw a pick, and it was just like, Jesus Christ, like that was like you could have just waited. And honestly, there, I don't know if they look back at it, but it seemed like they really could have said like, okay, that was the end of the half, or not the end of the half, but right before the 2-minute warning, they could have said, yeah, that's a 2-minute warning. We're going to stop this. But I guess they got it off like milliseconds before, got the play off, 2 or 3 interception, got a decent return. And now Ravens, that was pretty much it. Like if we're being completely honest here, because they get a touchdown right after that. They get a touchdown on the first drive out of the half, and that's where it was pretty much over because the Dolphins, your thing coming out of the half, it's like, okay, you're down 15 points here. They get the ball first. They've scored on most of their drives in this game, pretty much every drive, save for the drive at the end of the half. That was just one play, obviously. The kneel down in their own 20. So I mean that was nothing. And then a punt on their second drive, right? So it's like you haven't really been able to stop them most of this game. The one thing you absolutely cannot do is let them get a touchdown right on that first drive. And then they let them go 80 yards on the kick return. And I'm just like, it's over because they're at least going to get a field goal here. And you're going to go up, you're going to be down darn near 20 points. They get a touchdown anyway, Isaiah Likely. It's just like, it's over. Like, it's literally over 35-13. I mean, even if this was like first half and they had more time, like, I don't care. Like, it was done. They didn't do anything on the next drive. And then Tua threw an interception right after they had gotten a fumble recovery. And I was like, it's done. Like, there's nothing left for this game. And they continued. They kept scoring later on. I mean, it was just pretty much just a straight up beatdown, to be honest here. And again, yeah, I think both of us were surprised. I think most people were surprised with, like, once they got to that 14-13 point, the Dolphins just offered no resistance. Like the Ravens scoring at the rate they did, the Ravens being able to score a lot, that wasn't really the surprise. It was just the fact that Dolphins really couldn't do jack on defense to stop them. It's just, this gives me kind of pause, going into next week against the Bills, because it's like, okay, the Bills didn't have the greatest game against the Patriots, but I mean, they played the Patriots close and lost to them the first time. So I mean, maybe that's just a bad matchup. So now going into this game against the Bills, I don't know what's going to happen. Both teams have a lot to play for. Obviously, the Dolphins, they're in the playoffs, but they can obviously drop down. Bills are playing for a playoff spot potentially, depending on what happens with other games. So if I'm the Dolphins, like, you got to be pretty pissed off right now with how things turned out. You could have had the 1 seed possibly. Now you could be dropping all the way down to 6. So yeah, I mean, this one pretty much definitively said, like, if there's any questions at who the best team in the league is right now, I mean, there shouldn't have been any questions after that Niners game, but if there's any questions now, it's very obviously the Ravens. They should be the clear Super Bowl favorites.
Yeah, the Dolphins got to be mad at this one, but really, it's the anger should go all the way back to 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when they lost to the Tennessee Titans. At the very least, had they not lost that game, they would already be wrapped up with the division. This Bills game wouldn't matter, and they would have lost the 1 seed in this game, but they could move on to bigger and better things otherwise. Instead, you lose that game to the Titans, you turn around and beat the Cowboys, and then you get, like, destroyed by the Ravens, and now you already lost to the Bills. That you let them score 50 on you when you played them. Things are looking a little more bleak. The positives here are that the Dolphins are 4-4 away. They're 11-5, so obviously they're much better at home. They're going to hope that they can use that home field advantage to stop the Bills. The other positive is that obviously if you lose, you won't have home field advantage, but you at least have a playoff spot, and you hope that you can do something. But again, they're 4-4 away. They're not good when they're not in Miami, so that's going to be huge. And the series of December events for the Dolphins has sent them down a spiral that has cost them a lot of home field advantage in the playoffs. For the Ravens, though, they much to be mad at. They are actually, I guess, technically worse at home. They're 6-2 at home, only 1 loss away, but they're 13-3. Worse at home in this scenario doesn't really mean bad at home. It just means that they're worse. They are great. They're rolling. They don't really have many problems. I can't think of any weaknesses in their game. I mean, there's some things where if you can get ahead of them, or if you can force some turnovers or try to stop the run game. But these are all things that sound great on paper when you lay out weaknesses of a team, right? Ravens have a good run game. Stop the run game, you win. The problem is how do you stop the run game? It's also they're not a one-note offense. You can shut down Gus Edwards maybe, and then you still got to deal with Lamar and Isaiah Likely and Zay Flowers, and I mean they've just got a lot of synergy going. Lamar's got some receivers that he finally is getting comfortable with. Even in the absence of Mark Andrews, they have not really felt that absence at all. Ravens are definitely one of the stronger teams, or the strongest team in the league right now. We said this a few weeks ago, or maybe about a month or so ago. We said that we were pretty certain that it'd be hard to say that at their peak, the Niners matched up well against every other team in both the NFC and AFC. Now, as we've watched the last few weeks of the season play out, I'm going to have to backtrack on that one. And I think the Ravens at their peak are the best team in football. The closest one to them is the 49ers. I'm not going to backtrack too far away. But I think the Niners are not able, obviously they played with a lot of mistakes against the Ravens, but we can't just chalk that up to like bad luck. The Ravens forced those mistakes, and then they turned around and did it again to the Dolphins. So I think definitively we are watching the best team in football right now, and I think they've got a good shot to make a run for the playoffs. But they are in. They are the 1 seed. The AFC will run through Baltimore.